Hello, hello. Today's Chalk Talk is with Kelsey Griffith. Kelsey currently serves as a performance enhancement and rehab specialist at the Michaela Center for Sports Injury Prevention. That Michaela Center is an affiliate of Boston Children's Hospital. She's a former gymnast-turned dancer and has experience working with a wide range of sports, including gymnasts, the Mass Olympic Development Elite Soccer Program, Broadway performers, synchronized figure skaters, and many more. So like many of these Chalk Talks, the intention is to fill your mental skills toolbox, and rather than just pick one theme for this one, I wanted to talk to Kelsey about her top 5 tools for improving the mental game. So these will include strategies to manage disappointment, failure, fear, boosting confidence, ways to get into the zone. This is a really fun one, and I will be sure to add an ebook to sgunitedfoundation.org or lonniesilversides.com for you to be able to download that goes along with this one. Hope you enjoy. All right, Kelsey, welcome. Thank you for sharing some time with us. And first, I'm wondering if you could just start by sharing a little bit about your background with sport and also what you're doing now for work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome, the way we can connect from afar. So I actually grew up a dancer. I was a gymnast when I was really young, and then kind of switched boats around middle school. Started dancing pretty intensely and danced through high school and then into college as well. So I went to college for dance at Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania. Sustained a couple injuries towards the end of my college career that resulted in a couple surgeries. Still moved to New York with the intention of dancing, and then just realized it wasn't in the cards in the same way I had anticipated. And so I was fortunate enough to find myself working at a physical therapy facility contracted with Broadway. And throughout that experience, I started recognizing that some of the challenges I was experiencing with my injury recovery from a psychological standpoint were super, super common. I was, suffering from identity loss. This thing that I had had my whole life was suddenly gone. I had lost movement, which was so important to me, just both from a mental and physical wellness standpoint. And so as I started to experience that, seeing others kind of in a parallel existence, I decided to go get my master's in sports psychology. So I was really fortunate. I had a super supportive boss at that job in New York who was like, go get your degree. Let's see what you can do, with your experience and then that education combined. So after I got my master's at Springfield, I found myself actually kind of full circle at the Michaela Center. Dr. Michaela was my surgeon, and I always joked I wanted to work for him one day. And so here I am, I feel incredibly fortunate that things have taken shape in the way that they have. And I started the mental skills training program there 4 years ago now. So we continue to kind of grow and evolve and develop. I see clients one-on-one working on the mental game, both from a performance standpoint, but then also in regards to injury recovery. So where we're affiliated with sports medicine at Children's, I am seeing a number of athletes coming back from ACL tears, concussion, et cetera. So I kind of get to delve into both of those worlds, which is really, really exciting.
That's so awesome. So do you want to share briefly about the Michaela Center too? So what it's associated with, and go ahead and give your quick explanation of what that center is.
Absolutely. So the Michaela Center for Sports Injury Prevention, we are an affiliate of Boston Children's Hospital Division of Sports Medicine. We are an injury prevention center, so fully research-based. Our trainers are made up of both athletic training staff as well as strength and conditioning staff. And so it was really exciting when I interned there while I was in grad school, and then went to them and said, listen, you guys are doing amazing things with athletes. Have you considered adding in the mental game? And they said, here you go ahead and do it. And so we kind of collectively work to support athletes from a really holistic standpoint. Our staff is amazing. One of my coworkers actually described it as kind of like reverse engineering of injuries. So how do you recognize the ways in which you move and how that contributes to function or dysfunction? And then I get to kind of pop in there too and work with clients who, again, want to enhance their mental game, whether it's confidence or just staying motivated. I'm seeing a lot of that right now during COVID and quarantine. But then also my colleagues frequently refer to me when they're noticing athletes are having trouble perhaps returning from sport or from injury back to sport. And then we get to tag team. So it's a really, really great place. I feel so lucky to be there. And again, it's kind of been a nice full circle.
That's so great.
Injuries. So it's
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm finding that actually with a lot of the people that I'm chatting with, and even my own story, it's sort of like it comes full circle in terms of what did you need? You know, I feel like we're supplying and trying to give others something that we either needed or had the opportunity that made a big difference in our life, and being able to then sort of gift that to others.
Absolutely.
That's definitely been a common theme. So I'm excited about this chat because what we have done so far each week is essentially kind of pull a theme and talk about it. We talk a lot about it. I use the term toolbox, the invisible toolbox, mental skills. We talk a lot about our, muscles and how do we grow these mental muscles, and sort of practice and exercise them. And each week I've done a theme essentially. We had 1 week of gratitude, we had 1 week of confidence, we had 1 week on bravery. And what I asked you to do, what I was excited about is like, how about, just a chat for us to pick some favorite activities in terms of how do we build this mental toolbox. So I'm wondering if first you can talk about, I use actually last week was about mindfulness, and we talked about mindfulness being sort of that ability, the self-awareness piece, and which it seemed really important to what you are doing as well. And so maybe just start with like, what are we trying to like? Why do this work? Like, why work on the mental game? What are we trying to build here?
A lot of times when I see athletes, especially for the first time, it's pretty quickly evident that they realize something is missing in their mental game, and they just don't really know what that is. They're hearing, I think, more and more from coaches and parents and on TV that like mental toughness and resiliency, these are really good things to have. And they're like, yes, let's do it. And then that's kind of where it stops. And so, my hope is that we can start to develop and increase this self-awareness around the mental game, asking important questions like, when am I my best? You can't necessarily make change or develop tools if you don't know where you need to be functioning optimally. And it's going to be different from one kid to the next, one adult to the next, right? We all kind of have this place, like, I focus better when my head is clear, whereas some people like that kind of constant back and forth and bouncing around. And so that almost that like chaos can create focus for them. So it's, recognizing that the mental game, one, is not a one size fits all, that individual needs and building individual toolboxes, it's so important. And also I think recognizing and acknowledging that this isn't a one-time fix. And I think that's a really, really important thing when it comes to this kind of self-awareness piece, is that, oh, I need to maintain this, and that tools are meant to help maintain structures and fixtures and all of that. Like when we need some tweaking, we can go back to those things and know that they're there and harness kind of the power behind all of the mental skills training that we do.
That's great. Yeah, I was just chatting with a small group the other day, talking about we were doing good things and sort of gratitude and how that can impact performance. And some of our other chats have been about this, and mindfulness chat has been about this. And it was like, okay, it doesn't mean, you do this today and now you're good for the rest of, the season. It's like, you wouldn't go into the gym and like do a couple reps on, to get stronger biceps, and you do it once and then expect that they're still going to be strong in 3 months from now. So I love that. So we chatted a bit about sort of your top 5. Yep. So let's go through your top 5 sort of favorite skills to practice, or tools or exercises to practice. So do you want to go through the first one, the Tantrum Journal?
Yes, absolutely. So this is one of my favorites. I use it all the time. I talk about it in pretty much every presentation I do because it's so adaptable and can kind of cross boundaries, whether you're injured or just an adult human trying to survive quarantine or an elite level athlete. Essentially, I created it because I was seeing that athletes needed just to like literally brain dump. They just needed to be able to say what they needed to say without someone trying to fix it. And I always joke, I mean, they come to me. And so my tendency even is to say, okay, how do we fix it? What tools can we give you? And I was like, I think I need a tool that isn't a fix it tool. It's a tool where they can literally just get the thoughts out and process it. And so I encourage the Tantrum Journal as much as needed. I always say, when you wake up, brain dump, get it out of your head, start clean, start fresh. I encourage it a ton before practices and performances. The idea is if you have all of these thoughts marinating in your head, whether they're good thoughts or the not so good thoughts, the more they marinate, the kind of juicier they get, the bigger they feel, and the harder it can be to process them. And if you're walking onto the field, court, stage, ice, with a head full of thoughts, it's going to be a whole lot more challenging to focus on what you need in that moment. What I really encourage with the Tantrum Journal, it's not invalidating the thoughts. It's not like writing them down, throwing them out and saying, that's not important, or I shouldn't be feeling that way, but rather saying right now, here in this moment, those aren't the things that are most pertinent. Those aren't the things that are going to help me be my best. And so athletes tend to really like it, again, because no one's coming back at them to say like, well, you should do this, or why don't you try this? It's literally just get it out. They can literally tear it up, throw it away, kind of metaphorically, like, again, put a pin in it, don't need it. Or they can look at it, they can find what's controllable and what's not, which can be really, really helpful, especially in moments of stress or feeling overwhelmed, to be able to take action on something. So it's a pretty fun one, and it's easy. They can do it in their phones, they can do it on paper, whatever kind of thing they have available at that moment.
Super. I love that. So your second one was easy, medium, hard. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yes. So I've actually started using this one a lot during quarantine. The idea had kind of come to me shortly before. I was having some athletes who during like midterms were having a really, really hard time getting started on work, or really started on anything. And I keep describing it or giving the metaphor of like the cat who hides under the bed, but its tail sticking out. Like if you don't see the problems, like they're not there. And so you just spend more time actually thinking about the problems than taking action on them, or the tasks or whatever may be kind of burdening you. And so rather than create kind of a very stringent schedule of like, I need to get this done at this time and this done at this time, I've had athletes start to organize their tasks by easy, medium, and hard. They can also throw in long-term. That can be like your fourth category. The idea is that when you're not feeling motivated, and often that lack of motivation is due to feeling overwhelmed, start with something easy. I call it like your motivation wave. Start with something easy, just one thing. Feel good about that. See if you can catch the wave. Maybe do another easy thing. All right, now I feel pretty good. I got some stuff done. I got two things crossed off on the list. Maybe try something medium, so it's a way to find a way to prioritize what needs to get done, kind of like how much activation energy does it need? Because it's that activation energy, it's getting started that I think is the hardest piece. And so if you can pull the easy one, then you can kind of feel successful and accomplished in that, and hopefully kind of be able to jump on board that wave and keep on trucking.
I think that's so helpful, especially right now. So in one of my other roles is at academic support center for high school student athletes, students in general. So academic support role for high school students. And right now, it is like the motivation and the ability to procrastinate is at a peak because there's all sorts of other things that or nothing that they could be doing. So I love the easy, medium, hard, sort of making those columns. The other thing that I encourage kids to do is pick something that you really like to do and almost like dangle it like a carrot over yourself. Like you've got to almost play the game like you're the coach or you're the parent of yourself, where it's like, my little kids, it's like, oh, if you do this, then yes, you can have your cookie after dinner,
Yep.
right? And so I do that with little kids, right? And so, almost training ourselves to do that with ourselves and being able to think of something that I would much rather be doing, even if that means like sitting on the couch and doing nothing, but like not allow myself to do that until I do one thing from the list. And then maybe, like you said, you get started and then maybe you catch that wave and you keep getting, and you have set the satisfaction becomes being able to cross things off your list.
Exactly.
So feel really good, right?
Yep. It becomes like the behavior actually becomes the reward. Which is kind of what the hope is. And also, like you said, integrating the actual wants, the thing you want to do, let that be your break. So, okay, you do one easy thing. Maybe that day, if you're super just like motivation is MIA, do the easy thing, reward yourself. Do another easy thing, reward yourself. On the day where you feel good, tackle the hard thing. Then you might feel really, really good. And you're like, sweet, we're going to just get through the easy list, so it allows for some playing around, but still, accomplishing and feeling productive in what they need to get done.
Awesome. So the third one was training journal. And so just, if you want to talk a little bit about journaling, we do this in Strong Girls, our elementary school classes, they have, like a sort of book and journal that give them prompts. But this seems in high school kids too. I mean, there's lots of great research, adults as well, around even pencil to paper research, right? And how important and useful that can be. So this seems like maybe an opportunity that, without necessarily a specific prompt, but how do you help people learn how to journal? That maybe we're in an era that they are on their phones probably more. They maybe even right now, all of their schoolwork is on the computer. Like the pencil to paper and actually having a journal might be quite a sort of foreign task to some people. So how do you explain and get someone started, and what do you hope that your athletes are doing with a training journal?
Absolutely. So the training journal, it's funny. It's kind of morphed over time. It came to me initially because I was having coaches who were feeling frustrated that their athletes couldn't advocate for themselves in a practice. So they would ask the question, what do you want to do today? And the athlete wasn't able to answer. And so I started to think about why that might be. And I realized, like, we don't often have that freedom to say, this is what I want to do. Just by nature of kind of the structure, which is really funny now because all we have is the freedom to decide what we want to do. So it's been like a total—
We're untrained for it.
Exactly. And it's really, really hard. And so what I wanted to do was, provide a place for athletes to be able to learn to self-advocate, to create intentions and focuses for themselves. So then I kind of say you get like double duty. You have what you want to accomplish, your coach has what they want to accomplish, and you put those two things together, and that kind of creates just even more growth and development in each and every session or lesson or practice that you're in. I will say sometimes it's a hard sell, especially when athletes are in season and again, we're not in quarantine. They're like, I don't have time. And so I will allow the cell phones as a place to do it.
Like in notes.
In a note, exactly.
Or voice memos, right?
Yep,
Could they do
absolutely.
voice memos?
Yep, voice memos, any way just to start creating focus. There's actually a really great gentleman, Justin Sua, who's a mental skills coach with the Tampa Bay Rays, and he does a podcast. And he did a really cool video recently talking about focus and how it's something you have, it's something you do, not something you have. And so you kind of create that focus for yourself, and that's the point of the training journal. So I encourage athletes, what's your intention? Your big picture mindset. You're going into practice or you're going into a game. what do you want to accomplish from a mental skill standpoint. So if it's a practice and you're feeling really tired and you know you're going to be hard on yourself because you want to do more than you can, maybe your intention is to be a bit more patient, to be a bit more kind. And by setting that intention, you kind of have this accountability check throughout. So when you start to get frustrated, when you start to scold yourself, you're like, no, it's not what we're doing today. Today's purpose is to be kinder. And then from there, because athletes, of course, they like goals. They like those kind of digestible bits. And so then I encourage the more specific, like focus points. So, all right, you're going into an at-home workout. It's week 10 of quarantine. Your brain is so checked out. What 3 things can you pay attention to today to get something out of that workout? So whether it's make sure to use my core, make sure I'm breathing when things are getting challenging, and it just, again, it creates greater purpose. And what I'm finding, my athletes now are actually doing the training journals more because they have the time. And it's been music to my ears to hear them say like, wow, I actually got way more out of that than I thought I was going to. And it's because they're just giving direction. And then again, in combination with what a coach wants to accomplish, you're just going to have kind of double the power there. The most important piece of the journal is then the reflection though. So they have this kind of pre-practice, pre-game setup of the intention and the focus. Then I say, ask what went well. Did those things help you? What do you need to change? What was hard? All of that stuff. And then they always finish with one win. So I call it their template. Many of them take it and modify based on what they need. But I think it's a great starting point. It's a great way, again, to feel empowered in their training, to know that they are in the driver's seat, in essence. They're the athlete. Why am I here? I want to see this progress because I want it, not because someone else is telling me to want it.
That's so great. And I will make sure to write out all of these things that Kelsey is sharing with us into an ebook that people can download as well. I know I was, taking notes there of what you were saying. So, the thing, it feels, again, to loop back to right where we started too, is that what you're helping them build is just awareness, right? Because if they're setting the intention and thinking about, and then sort of reflecting after and thinking about how it went, what went well, what's one win, and even that awareness during the training or game, when you have that intention already set ahead of time, it sort of provides this real opportunity to be in tune and with what they're doing. And we're so often on autopilot, right? Yeah. And so we're on autopilot all day long. I used the analogy the other night, could anyone tell me what their toothpaste tasted like last night? No one, I couldn't tell you. I wasn't paying attention. I just did it, right? You just do certain things and you do it. So anytime we can snap ourselves out of autopilot mode, no matter what age we are, we're going to benefit from it. But from a performance standpoint, it seems like if we can create that focus and that intention, it might open up the door to sort of really it might open up the door to get into the zone, right? Which is that ultimate experience that athletes want to get, where they're sort of in a state of flow or something like that. Is that sort of the link that you hope, you hope that eventually can come out of something like that?
Absolutely. It's, kind of speaks to the mindfulness presence piece of when you're there. So again, I was struggling with the fact, you hear, and I heard this too, leave it at the door. When I watch into the studio, you're supposed to leave it at the door. And what I was seeing, these kids are literally changing in the car, eating their snack in the car, throwing on their stuff and getting onto the field, getting onto the ice. And you were human. So to just leave it at the door is really, really hard. And so I wanted them to have a way to be able to create a more functional space for their performance. So again, it's not to invalidate what happened at school. If you had a bad day, chances are to just cut ties with that is going to be really, really hard. So what can you do to create a greater focus for yourself? So even you're just 1% more present than you might have been otherwise. So yeah, I love the mention of the zone, flow, all of that. If they're kind of creating their performance bubble, what do I want? And how do I get, get into performance mode, know I'm here, give my best, and be able to kind of check off those accomplishments as they come.
That's great. What you're teaching them is that, like, yes, I know that I should leave it all behind me, but then it's like, how, right? So you're teaching them how to leave it all behind them.
Exactly.
And it just made me think of the analogy of our kids, young kids. So some parents or people that might be listening to this might be, parents of kids that go through our program. We hear often, like, you might tell your kids, calm down, right? And it's like, how do I calm down? Like, calm down, right? Like, that is such a big phrase that I use it as well. But it kind of is that, it just made me think, it's sort of the analogy, it made me think of that, where it's like, but we need to teach them how to calm down.
Exactly.
And so this is sort of what you, I think, have brought up, and what these tools are, is like, yes, I know I want to be feeling confident, and I want to be present, and I want to, like, yes, I know I want all these things, but how? So that's a great example there. So 4 out of 5. So my best activity, the mental game check-in. Will you share some more information about that?
Absolutely. So this one actually very much speaks to the how. So what I'll ask athletes to do is brainstorm, say, the 5 qualities they feel help them be their best in performance. So whether it's like arousal level, again, some people need to be jazzed, ready to go. Some people need to be super, super calm. Whether it's, confidence tends to be a big one. I know I do better when I feel confident. Like, there's tons of research on that. It could be things like effort level, focus, whatever. Again, very individualized, but we can't tackle the how if the athlete doesn't know what they need. So by brainstorming, even asking them to think about a moment where they were their best, what was that? What was in play in that moment in particular? And how might that have been different from other moments? Once they have the qualities, again, handful, couple, essentially we're trying to create a mental warm-up. I ask them to literally, again, write them down and give themselves, I'd say, like, if possible, 30 minutes to an hour before they're going to practice or into a performance setting, do a checklist, rate themselves on a scale of 0 to 10. So, all right, I need to be like, stress level, I want stress level low. If they go and do their checklist and they're at an 8, what can they do in that time before to help come down a notch? And we talk about the fact they're not going to go from an 8 to a 0. But if they can even go from an 8 to a 7, then there's the added benefit of feeling like they made change, of feeling in control of that mental game, just like they would be their physical game. So, all right, my hamstring feels kind of tight today. I did a really hard workout yesterday. They might pay a little more attention to that before going into a game. Do you know what I mean? So it's that same sort of like, what muscles do you need to be at their best, at their strongest, most kind of like flexible, malleable, all of that. And then what action can you take to get those muscles where you want them to be?
Awesome. And last one from your top 5, last one from your top 5 is top 5 moments.
Yeah, so this is one of my favorites. I do a lot of self-talk work with my athletes. I think it's super important. I know when I was a gymnast, my self-talk was probably not super great. And I think had I believed in my capabilities a bit more, been able to kind of channel my self-talk functionally, probably would have stayed in the sport a bit longer. And so what I was seeing in this self-talk work is that athletes, they really shoot for using I can, which is awesome. They know that I can is helpful, but what was happening is they say the I can and they don't necessarily believe it. So for instance, I see a lot of gymnasts, a lot of figure skaters where you have these discrete skills that actually are risky, like they have inherent risk in them. So when they say I can, the gymnast standing on the balance beam going to do like their series is like, I can. And they're like, but I can't. Like, they can't get past.
Or I might not.
Exactly. Or like, but I didn't last time. So like, how do I know? And so what I wanted to do was find a way to create affirmations for athletes based on their own successes. So if you can root things like, I am capable, I am strong, I will fight till the end, based off a moment where you've actually done those things, there's more grounding to them. So even when you're saying it, if you don't necessarily believe it, you kind of can prove yourself wrong in a way and say, but you've done this before, you have harnessed these things before. Let those be part of the process now. And I had an awesome moment with a musician once. We made some affirmations. She was having a hard time with performance anxiety, and specifically in regards to auditioning. And she came up with statements. I think it was like, I will keep fighting. I am capable. I am strong. And when she looked particularly at I'm capable and I am strong, she was like, yeah, I'm not going to believe those. Like she instantly had this moment of like, that's the problem. I don't believe it. And what I did was look at her and say, but are you capable of pushing through? Are you capable of overcoming challenge? Maybe in this moment, you don't feel super capable of like, getting into the company or whatnot, but you have a lot of other areas in which you can demonstrate that capability, demonstrate that strength. And she was like, oh, okay. So I am strong in that I'm fighting this. Doesn't mean in that moment I'm going to be 100% like, I got this, but I know that I can demonstrate that strength in kind of battling those nerves. That's that strength in kind of a different realm. So that's kind of where those moments come from. And so I had them brainstorm, what moments of pride, achievement, accomplishment, resiliency. They then identify why those moments matter. And from there, we then go to the affirmation place. So again, there's kind of this process of like, okay, how have you shown those qualities? What do you bring to the table in these moments?
And so they've got their own evidence, right? Like they're finding their own evidence so that they can believe it more. That's great. And that actually leads me, the last thing I wanted to ask you about was a lot of these, so, we work with college student athletes that are helping coach our young girl programs. And by virtue of them engaging with young girls, teaching them about these mental skills, of course, we hope that they're also, sort of learning how to embody them and apply these things to themselves as well. And so all of these, I think, are so fantastic. And I was thinking about our youngest kids. So we start working with girls, and this is not to make them high performers. We're just start working with girls about getting engaged in sport and physical activity and the mindset training in order for them to feel their sort of best, best and happiest and most confident selves. Yep. And using sort of fitness and team as the avenue, so to speak, in order to teach some of these other skills. And so when I think about our youngest girls, so we have as young as 5-year-olds that are on our summer programs right now, and we partner them up with a college athlete, and then they go off into breakout rooms and work on maybe confidence as a theme or gratitude as a theme. Or yesterday they did a control activity. So there was a person, drawn, and they had to choose what things can they control that go inside the body versus things that are outside of their control have to go outside of their body. So the weather goes on the outside, and they're
awesome way to do that. I love it.
Yeah, their thing that that they can't go to school right now is on the outside, or they can't see their friends right now, it's on the outside, can't control it. What can we control? So we can do some of these activities with kids as young as 5. And I think what I'm so excited about long term is like, what is this 5-year-old that can learn these skills? Where is their strength going to be when they're, 18 or 25 or 35, right? And if they can kind of get into a habit of thinking this way and practicing and knowing that they can come back and practice it. Yeah. It's a long way of saying one of my questions was going to be, when you think about the youngest girls, one of the things that tends to come up is in terms of like, what might some of the youngest kids need, or what might they benefit from in terms of the mental skills training side of things, what comes up often is confidence. We want girls, so we use power poses a lot, and, you know, get your shoulders back and eyes to eyes, and, you know, firm handshakes, and, you know, act as if, you know, fake it till you make it kind of stuff if you need to. So those are kind of some things that we might talk about. But confidence is that's definitely a big thing that I think everybody wants, right? I mean, like, if we're being honest, like, but when you think about some of these activities, how might you, or what might you do to translate it for someone really young? Like, maybe it's self-talk, maybe it's one of the sort of the last activities you did and that's where I was like, oh, maybe this is a great segue, because that last activity I feel like could be translated to young kids as well, of like creating find that evidence that you have shown that you can do hard things, right? So what do you think about that?
I very much agree. I think that top 5 example is awesome for a younger group, and can so easily be kind of modified to accommodate kind of like learning stage and all of that. I think what's really important is to emphasize, like, my favorite moments of success are moments of failure. I love it when my kids will say, like, I fell off beam. And that was it. Like, that's the first thing they think of. And that was successful because I do think sometimes sports psychology can kind of have this like puppies and rainbows vibe that like everything's awesome all the time. And I think an exercise like that, especially for younger girls, to learn that like failing is good. Like we have this, like, we hear it, but again, we don't necessarily believe it. And maybe sometimes it's not even reinforced in the way that would be most beneficial. So if you can kind of take an exercise like that and say, tell me about a moment that was hard for you, you know, almost like shift that. So early they're hearing that like, yeah, that was hard, but like, I still was really strong, and like, I didn't give up, and I asked for help when I needed it. Like, so they can start to see success, like failure as success at a really young age, I think would be amazing. Because that, I think, is like, for kids, I think it is easier to fail and be like, that's okay, let's do it again. Like, you think about like little babies when they're learning to walk, like they fall and you're not like, oh, sorry, good luck. Like, you know, you don't just abandon ship. Like, you're like, no, you got it, keep going. And so I think that stays with them for a little while, and then it starts to go away. And if we can talk about waves, like catch that wave when it's there and build it, that could be super cool.
That's such helpful advice. I was reminded of when my toddlers were running, and if they would, you know, anytime they would fall, it would always be like, woohoo, you fell, you know, like, you know, like we would laugh. We always had the phrase, laugh it off. And I remember my youngest took a digger on the pavement one time, and she kind of got up and was like, ha, 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 you know, trying to laugh it off.
Yep.
Like that, you know, and there's a shift, and I don't know how or why it happens, where all of a sudden that, you know, sort of reaction is harder to, as we get older, it becomes a little bit harder to sort of still find the laughter or joy in some of these failures and moments. So trying to help them understand that, I think is a fantastic idea. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I love these. We could keep talking for hours about all of this. Maybe this is part 1. We've got your top 5, and we'll have to do another one of the next top 5.
Perfect.
But I appreciate you sharing all of this, and we will make sure to put links to the Michaela Center, and we will, and you, and we will, I will type all of these activities up as well, so people can find them in a place easily accessible. Thank you again.
Yeah, this was awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.